This podcast is presented to you by the all-new Seltos SUV from Kia, official vehicle of the Orlando Magic. Give it everything, and welcome to the final Magic Pod Squad presented by Kia of the season. Dante Markelle, David Steele, Jeff Turner, George Galante, and guys, I don't know how we do this, or we're going to do our best to recap the last 11 months of this Magic season. It's been a wild one, unlike any other, and I was looking it up. The very first Pod Squad that we did was October 8th with John Hammond. We are coming up on 11 months since we did our first show of the season. It's unbelievable. And David, you just finished year 31. I know you never had a year like this one. Just crazy.
No, it's certainly unprecedented. I mean, everything in the world is unprecedented right now. So it's not a surprise that what we've been through is something that nobody's ever been through. But, the thing is, Dante, it's still going on. I mean, you think about the 8 teams that are about to survive and move on at the bubble at Disney. They still have another 6 or plus weeks to finish out this NBA season. So it's been crazy.
My mind always goes to that day in Memphis when things kind of started to get weird. We were getting told, George was like, you can't talk to the players. Nobody. You can't go near them. You can't, like that. Remember that whole day?
You could talk to them, but you just had to be about 25 feet away.
You had to be 25 feet. That's right. When, to me, when I think about this whole year, my mind goes right there. And then winning that game and standing on the tarmac and all that. But what do you guys think of when you think of this year?
You know what? That makes me laugh because we're going through that whole stretch, right, where they've separated the players, like they've got their own little table, the meeting rooms, and everything. And David and I are jammed into press row, like shoulder to shoulder with all of these people. It's like, what are we doing? Like, are we important or what? So, yeah.
Well, and remember, too, you go into the media meal in Memphis there, and there's bowls of pretzels and chips, and everybody's digging their hands in there.
Yes.
It was a concerted effort to keep the players safe, and that was it.
But you know what? You say that, and then, we were doing all of these things to, maintain social distance at the time of what we thought was social distance and this, that, and the other. But then we were all getting on the buses and the planes with them. So I'm like, okay, let me get this right. I can't talk to them, face to face in a room, a giant room, but I can go ahead and get on the plane with everybody. That's fine. Yeah. That's no big deal. Or on the bus. And everybody's like, well, and you just realize we're just in for a world of confusion. We're just going to step into this world of confusion for the next, what has now been 5 months, 6 months. It's crazy.
And George, I remember walking back from lunch. I think it was the day of that game. Mm-hmm. We'd had tamales and ribs, at our favorite spot on Beale Street.
Yep.
And we're walking back 2 or 3 blocks, and I think you got a call from somebody, and they said, in the press conference, David, you're not going to be able to do a one-on-one interview with Coach Clifford anymore. You're going to be sitting with the rest of the media, and I couldn't get within 6 feet of Steve Clifford for a pregame interview. Right. And we thought, wow, this is like changing everything. We thought that was a big deal. And now, look what 36 hours later, the entire NBA is shut down.
Now you guys are calling games from a place that you could have done that from your living room, I think.
Yes. Now we're in a bunker.
Crazy.
The craziest thing to that point was watching you unwrap tamales. That was the craziest thing of our whole season.
And then eat them, which to you was shocking that anybody would do that.
But you know what? I have to give you guys credit because I was there watching you guys work for the last 2-3 weeks. You guys are amazing because what you had to go through to call those games, especially when you take into account what happened initially for Game 5 against Milwaukee, and to just call those games not being in the arenas, but you talk to anybody outside and they all felt like you guys were there. And that's a real credit to you guys. I mean, you guys were true pros and it was amazing to watch what went into putting those broadcasts together. So I mean, you guys were top notch.
Appreciate it, George. It was something, wasn't it, JT? Me and you and
made it happen.
Bill and Mark, audio, camera guy. Bill and Mark and me and Jeff and George in the bunker.
That's
George
great.
was he was our stage manager, floor manager, statistician, runner. He did everything. He was in touch with Disney, with whatever was going on, whatever access we had to information from the game. George was our conduit for that in real time. It was crazy, but we weren't the only ones going through it. I mean, every NBA team that was in the bubble, their local broadcasters were doing something similar to what we did. So, it was a new world for all of us, wasn't it, Jeff?
It was. And that reminds me, George, were you able to give your daughter Kate back her little grease board or little whiteboard? Good. That really came in handy, didn't it, David?
Yes.
Oh,
No, it
the
did.
runs.
Well, here's the funny thing was, everything evolved. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. That first scrimmage game, I felt terrible about the way everything sounded, and I didn't think it was all that great. Even though our production people, Ty Eastham and Greg Hartung and all the people, David Storm, the people that run the arena broadcast facility, they did an amazing job, really, before we even got there, to pull, to turn the arena into a television live broadcast studio. I mean, first of all, we got to give credit to all of those folks. And, but then when we got on the air, it was just so odd. And I think there were a lot of bugs to work out. One of the bugs to work out was George would hold up a note on his grease board, on Kate's grease board that he brought from home, like a 10-0 run. He would write 10-0, but it was dark. We had, it was like a theater setting. So Jeff and I are kind of lit, and we had little lamps that we figured out after game one that we needed a lamp, to sit on top of our work. So that we didn't have that in game one. But we figured out we got a lamp. George is holding up numbers on a grease board, and Jeff and I can't see him because he's in the dark and we're in the light. So the information George has is totally worthless to us. And it only took us. We're bright. Jeff went to Vanderbilt, and I'm an SEC guy, but not at that level academically. But it took us a few games to figure out that maybe if we put a light on that, on George's sign, that we could actually see it. And I think it was not Jeff. You and I didn't figure it out. It was Bill.
Bill, I think, figured it out. Yeah, no question about it. That reminds me, David. You know what? We walked out of the arena the other night. You forgot to take your lamps with you, didn't you?
I did. I bought those lamps.
Yeah, David.
I forgot.
We needed lamps
out of my own pocket. In fact, I got to send an invoice to somebody to get reimbursed for those 1999 lamps.
It was strange, though. You're right. I mean, you're walking in. Remember walking into that building for the first time, and you have free reign of an empty arena. There's no court down. The lights are off, and you're looking around and working with a crew. Everybody's got masks on. You can't get near people. You're afraid to touch anything that anyone else touched, and you're loading up on hand sanitizer, and it was just a surreal feeling. And then, I mean, did you ever feel 100% comfortable? Because like George said, you wouldn't know it. We're listening to you guys and the way you called the game. Did you eventually get some kind of a rhythm, or was it kind of awkward the whole time for you?
Well, I think that's the whole thing is a tribute to the professional that David is. Come on, I just follow wherever he goes. So I think we did, David. I think we got a little bit of a rhythm as we were going. I mean, you make the best of any situation. Those first couple of broadcasts it was really awkward, and but we would talk and kind of as we were walking out to our cars through an empty arena about, okay, what could we do better? Or I don't know about you guys, but I went back, I try to go back and watch, especially those, to see what we could do better. And I think the hardest thing was there's no energy, right? Like you have to create your own energy. And I think the players felt that as well, and where they were. So I think that was one of the big things is, really trying to get lost in the game and not what your surroundings are. The fact that you're watching it on a television monitor, everything else was the same. So, for me, once the game started, I think just kind of focus on what's happening and not really on your surroundings kind of helped a little bit.
Yeah, that was a challenge. Generating the energy. Did you find that too, Dante? Posting pre-half post is a little different, but still it had to feel weird for you and Brian Hill also.
We're used to yelling over the noise, like you guys are when you're doing the game, when we're doing those hits. And so to generate that excitement, I tend to scream and yell on the broadcast anyway. So I was able to get there somewhat, but to not have to compete with the fans and all that was strange. But the funny thing for me was when they moved us, and again, you're right, thanks to Ty Eastham and Storm and Mike Sprysensky and the radio, like there were radio engineers, TV engineers, and to make that all happen was just astounding. But when they moved us from the perch up there on the concourse into the practice level, into the practice court, and then when we were off air following around Brian Hill, I was unbelievable. I mean, he had free reign of the coach's locker room, the kitchen. I mean, he goes, yeah, come on, let's go in here and grab a water. Let's go in here and put the TV on in the family room and watch the game. He was living large. He made himself right at home.
Go ahead, George.
No, I walked in one day. I was always there after you guys were, and the best was I was doing the Zoom calls, the pregame Zoom calls from the coach's office because it was close. And the best was when I walked in there one day and the coffee machine was already going, and B was standing there. He's like, "Hey, George, good morning. How's it going? You need a cup of coffee?" And I'm like, "No, B, I'm good. I'm good, thank you." I didn't expect anybody to be in there at all. I just was in there, doing the Zooms, and B was already in there brewing some coffee. It's good.
Just getting a quick lift in, guys. Help yourself.
Well, the funny thing is we were there, right? David and George and I were all down there while you guys were up on the porch, and we were all separated. We never saw each other at games.
Right.
David, George, we would have, you just did your coach's stuff in there, your Zoom calls. We would have never dreamed of going in the coach's locker room or anything. David and I are changing in the public bathrooms and stuff. It's like, what?
Well, now,
we can do this? Really? This is okay?
Don't you think we should explain why everything moved? Because, this is the information, it's not complete. We were doing things one way. Jeff and I were working from the bunker on the air, but then we had access to a public bathroom that we would change our clothes and get ready, to go on the air. And Dante, you and Brian were up in the Arena Bowl. This was early in the restart. Up in your normal spot with the scoreboard in the background and the arena in the background. It was empty, but I think it looked great. And then wrestling took over the Amway Center.
Right.
And so everything changed. We had to move out. They had access to all those areas. And so then we got cordoned off into a different area, which included the practice court, the coach's locker room, and we had a different entry and exit route for the rest of the go. So that happened about the time the playoffs started, maybe the last couple of restart games.
Right.
Then we had access to the coach's locker room, which is really nice, and none of us had ever seen. And it was, and Brian Hill, like you said, Dante, he felt real comfortable in there. So we had a good time after that began. You know what? My favorite thing.
We could all be together.
Yeah. I discovered I'd never seen those toothbrushes. They have a jar at the sink. And I thought, you know what? I just ate my sandwich because we also had to bring our meals in. There's no immediate meals. So I got a lunchbox. Jeff has his lunchbox. I've got a Paw Patrol. Jeff, what did you have? You had
I had a plastic bag.
Yeah.
Jeff's too cool. He had a brown bag. Jeff's way cooler than us. He had a brown bag.
Yeah.
So we bring our own food. We eat, and then you're getting ready to go on the air. You want to make sure you don't have food in your teeth because you might smile, and at some point someone might see food. So in the coach's locker room, there's this jar, and they're wrapped up and totally wrapped up.
No, Dante. David took the one that said Clifford right on it too. Which is weird. He just put it right in his mouth.
So I opened one of them up, and I brushed my teeth, and it's got toothpaste in it. The brush has toothpaste already in it. So
individually wrapped.
Brush your teeth. Individually wrapped. Totally safe.
Make himself at home.
That was the greatest thing I've ever seen.
That is fantastic.
I actually took a picture of it. I'm going to order some and have them, so if I go places, I just throw one of those in my bag.
Yeah, you got to. That's a Sid and Jacob find. They found those years ago. Those have been in the players' locker room.
That's
for
fantastic.
A really long time.
I like that giant vat of Listerine. I was using that thing, just hammering that, get a little. And then I don't know about you guys, but I found Pat Delaney's shower shoes to be the most
Oh,
comfortable.
I was going to say, Mike Batiste fit me perfectly. So that was great.
Did he? And all that, it just worked out. It was meant to be, really. It was meant to be.
Oh, those guys are to go in there. It's gonna be like Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
Yeah.
Somebody's been wearing my sandals.
I knew we crossed the line when David had Hetzel's robe on. I knew we crossed the line at that point.
We're gonna,
No return.
They're gonna find Brian's garment bag. They're gonna find my shoes. They're gonna find
Right.
all that stuff.
A couple of lamps in there.
I got to get those
David's
back for you.
lamps.
I brought in my own Keurig from home to plug into the Kia deck so we would have coffee. But yeah, it was a strange situation, and it's one we'll never forget. There's no question about it. But we got through it, and then we're about right about to go on the air, and Chumo Kiki's shooting jumpers in there, and Al Farouk Amino's in there warming up, and it was just it was kind of a strange scene, but we got through it. We got through it, and all in all, unfortunately, the season came to an end a couple of days ago, but. If you look at the start of the season, guys, you remember, you're coming into training camp and we had added Al Farouk Aminu and you're going into now year 3 of Jonathan Isaac. You're excited about that. And the biggest, you just re-signed Vuch and Terrence Ross. And we're getting our first look at Markelle Fultz, to kind of see what we had here with Markelle. I mean, I remember that, just kind of that excitement of training camp and finally getting this thing on the ground with all these pieces.
Yeah, I
Go ahead,
heard Steve Clifford talk about it after the game, about how different the roster looked. And I hadn't really thought of that.
Right.
And I thought that was a great comment for him to present at the end of game number 5. As close as we are to the situation, I had not really put all that together, that how different the team looked from day one of training camp to the end of the playoffs finally in late August. But yeah, I mean, you had, because I remember thinking, Jeff, you and I talked about it so much. Look how deep this roster is at the 4 position. You've got Al Farouk Aminu, you've got Gordon that can play it, you've got Isaac can all play that spot. That is you're stacked at that spot, and you lose all 3 of those guys in the playoffs. So, and Gary Clark Jr., a guy that wasn't on your team until January, is your guy playing 30 minutes a game. It was
Against
crazy.
the MVP.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, we could have used those guys, right? Like, yeah, you're right, David. Come to think of it, we were talking, are we too deep, right? Like, how is Steve going to be able to manage the minutes and get all of these guys on the floor at the 4 position? And then we're starting 2 guys really at the 3 and 4 that we picked up right around the trade deadline or just before, in Gary Clark and James Ennis. And it just kind of reflecting and continuing to watch the playoffs and everything, just what those 2 guys did coming in middle of the season and what they brought to the team. Those Gary Clark and James Ennis, warriors, to be put in that situation, and then you go into the playoffs and, those 2 guys and Kim Birch really responsible for trying to slow down Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, just kudos to those guys. I know, Steve Clifford, he had high praise for all 3 of those guys. But, really, if you think about it from where we started to where we finished and the roster, as you guys are talking about, those guys kind of just jump out to me as taking advantage of an opportunity, but really giving us something, just toughness, effort, energy, that frankly, I'm not sure if we don't have those guys down the stretch through the play-in games or whatever we want to call them, the seeding games. I'm not even sure we get there, to be honest with you. So kudos to them.
No, it's a good point. Yeah, go ahead, George. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, well, now guys, looking ahead a little bit, where do you think this roster falls, especially even at the power forward spot for next year? Because you're probably going to be without Jonathan for the season, or at least a good chunk of it. I mean, Jeff Weltman yesterday already said that we're planning on not having him at all for the season. Farouk is coming off of his injury. Where do you think we look there at that 4 spot?
Well, I mean, you're going to have Gordon. I think Farouk is likely to be back and ready to go. It depends on when this starts, but I'm expecting and I think the team is too, expecting to have him back and Aaron. And I don't know if you're going to need to pick up other players at that spot now or not. Gary Clark could be in the mix as well. You know, I mean, I know there's, you know, a lot of coaches like this guy. I mean, Houston didn't really want to lose him. They were in a situation in January where they had to let one guy go for luxury tax purposes and freeing up a roster spot for later on. And, you know, I think if they had a do-over, they might have let Isaiah Hartenstein go instead of Gary Clark Jr. at this point, but they made that decision and we were the beneficiary. So I think Clark is an NBA player, so for sure, and can play on a good team. We've seen that. So he might be a part of the mix. Jeff Weltman and John Hammond, they've got some big decisions to make, though, between now and the start of the season.
Dante mentioned earlier, you know, we also saw while we were in the practice facility, we saw Chuma Okeke as well. And,
Right.
you know, he's put on some size, which, you know, has given some time. He was moving pretty well. Obviously, for him, I think the big issue is he hasn't played. And so that's going to take him a little bit of time. So, I mean, I think there are pieces there at the 4 spot and everything, certainly enough that, you know, I think it's realistic to say, and again, depending on when the season starts, we don't know that planning on not having Jonathan Isaac is realistic. You know, you tear your ACL, you need a year at least, right? To recover from that. So, you know, it puts us into August. So we'll see where we go there. But again, I think, you know, if you've got Aaron, you know, and Chief, and Chuma, and then as David says, whatever you decide to do with Gary Clark, I think you got some pieces there that you can build with. See what we add.
All right, we're going to pay Jeff Turner's expenses here during the season. Hey, Florida, if you need to venture out and get your essential items, please don't get behind the wheel. If you've been drinking, instead find a designated sober driver or use a delivery service. And remind your designated driver to always wear their safety belt and comply with the speed limit. We want everyone to make it back home safely. Remember, drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by the Florida Department of Transportation. And you guys are mentioning Jonathan Isaac, and you know, you think about the highs that we had and big wins in LA, and you know, the excitement of that, you know, winning 3 straight games on that road trip, and you know, you had a lot of high moments, but twice, I mean, we had 2 crushing lows. We lost Jonathan Isaac twice this year. We lost him on New Year's Day with that first injury, and then the ACL in August at the end of the seeding games. I mean, just what that poor guy's been through. But his attitude is just incredible. We talked to Jeff Weltman yesterday on Magic Drive Time, and he said the day after, he's sitting in a chair getting ready to be picked up to have his surgery, and he said, hey, this is day 1 of my rehab. Let's go get it. You know, just the unbelievable positive mentality that guy has. Obviously deeply rooted in his faith, but just a special individual, and you just feel for what that guy has gone through this year.
Yeah, I wonder how many players have had 2 season-ending injuries in one season. I mean, a season-ending injury by name is end of the season, right?
Right, correct.
and then it happens twice. So it's just another one of the bizarre things that happened during
That's hard to do.
year.
That's really hard to do.
It's hard to do.
May never be done again.
No, I hope not. I hope not.
That's anything. That could be and is this anything for next year? We'll have to put that one away.
But that time in DC, you're sitting there, you watch him get, taken off the floor on a stretcher, and you're thinking this. And then in the locker room, he's getting dressed and he's laughing and he's walking to the plane, and he said, just add that to the list of bizarre things that have happened this year. You think he's gone for the year, then you think he might miss a game or 2. Right?
Yeah,
I know Jeff never felt like it was, going to be good.
That's true.
When we saw it, and you know, we were hearing, you know, oh, he says he's fine, and I was thinking, no, he's not fine.
No, he's not.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually thought then that it might have been an ACL, just the way that it happened. But I just, you know, like, I guess having gone through one of those, an ACL tear and everything, it's just, you know, you talked about Jonathan Isaac's spirit, his faith and things like that. When you're rehabbing a severe injury like that, there are so many ups and downs, guys, emotionally. I mean, you reach a level where you think you see progress, like great progress, and then you'll have a week where it's just like, you just can't achieve the strength goals you want, or you can't move, or you get some more swelling. That's just like, where did this come from? It is just such a grind to come back from something like that. But because of who he is, like, you just feel like, J.I.'s, he's going to be there, he's going to be back. And we all want him on the floor so bad, not just because we know he helps the team, but for him, from a mental standpoint, when this is what you do and this is what you work for, just seeing him on the floor, when we came back for the seeding games, we'd really going in, we really weren't sure, right, that he would even play. He was going, he was going to try it. And I really believe, according to everything everybody said, was that first game, that incredible first game that he came back and played, 10 minutes or 12 minutes, whatever, was really a reward. They were just giving him here's a reward for all your hard work. And then it was like, whoa, okay. That's, exactly that. But just to be where he was and to see the joy that he was playing after, just knowing what he went through, there's a low, but that's one of the highs too, right? Just to see him get back out on the court and play with that, just confidence and joy that is, exemplified in that, megawatt smile on his face. I mean, he is just like, he lights up a room. So
but
it was fun to watch.
He had even more confidence to me when we saw him. He was a different player even in those 4 games where we watched him than we watched him all the previous year, or even in the beginning of this year. Like I just felt like I don't know what switch turned on inside of him, or if it was just that first game where he hit so many shots and that ended up, building onto his confidence. But he just seemed like a completely different guy, to the point where, the 4 of us were talking like, okay, if we have him and he's playing like this,
yes,
right. What is this going to look like? This could be, because we kind of went into the seeding games, just thinking, okay, we're going to hover around 8 and we'll play Milwaukee and it probably won't be good. And, we're going to see how this works. And then all of a sudden Jonathan comes out and it completely changed. It changed everything. It changed everything.
Well, I think his play lifted the play of everybody on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, it changed everything. It changed I think it changed the way they felt about their chance to be successful too, because he was so good. And what it was, but in retrospect now, it was a window into the future, right, for the team and for us, because we know he gave us a glimpse of what he's going to be all about as a player. And he's going to come back. He's 22 years old. So let's say he's 23 when he comes back, the season after next. He's 23. I mean, he still has a lot of years left, and he could stay away from the injuries, and hopefully, that, knock on wood, this will be the last significant injury for J.I. And there's a history of players having problems early in their career and then, settling down and having long and successful careers. So, I don't think we should be too discouraged about it. It's disappointing, but he's given us, again, a window into what his future looks like. We know how hard he works. We know how strong his character is. We know how much his teammates love him. We know how much his coaches appreciate what he does. So, it's going to be a tough year for us not to see him on the floor. It's going to be even tougher for him not to be out there. But I still think he's got an incredible future, and he's going to be a central part of this team for many years.
Well, the big part of that, David, is that with the advances in medicine and technology surrounding surgeries and everything, an ACL tear no longer is a career-ending injury, right? It's just, these things happen, right, in the NBA, and we see guys come back just as good all the time. So there's a lot to be hopeful about with Jonathan Isaac.
Yeah, and you guys, and I had not told you guys this. George knows it a little bit, but people ask once in a while, what is it about Jonathan? What separates him? And I'll give you an example. I mean, me and George did a Magic Pod Squad with Jonathan Isaac, and I had asked George beforehand at the end, can I ask Jonathan to do a video message for me? I've got a mutual friend whose son is 10 and just going through a horrific battle with cancer. You guys put together a video for him. He's a big Magic fan. He watches the games. So, I had Jeff and David do one, and he said, yeah, just ask him. He sent me the video, unbelievable message, and we recorded it and sent it to him, and it made his world. And then he sends me a text a week later and said, how's my guy Grayson doing? Following up. You don't always see kind of that follow-up, and these guys are tugged in so many different directions, and so many requests are asked of them. And George, you know that, but he wanted to make sure he was feeling better. Then he said, can you give me his address? And I said, yeah, sure. I got his address, and he mailed him some gear, bobblehead of his own, and he's a man of faith, so at his church they have a prayer shawl, and they cut off pieces of it, and you're supposed to hold it or wear it while the church prays for you. And he cut off a piece of that from the church and sent it to Grayson and asked if he would wear it so that he and the entire church could pray for him. And then it continued to be every week or two, how's my guy doing? How's my guy doing? And just a constant follow-up, to the point that, his mother texted me when he rang the bell and got to get out of the hospital about a month ago, that was one of the biggest motivating factors, was that someone like that, he said, we don't understand that. Thank God we've never had to go through that with what that would mean to our kid. But somebody in that role and of that significance, taking the time and having that interest in him, lifted him, and just kind of was one of the factors that he was able to beat that thing. And I told Jonathan, he needs to know that, what that meant to him. But I think it's interesting, and I think that's something. You hear that, you see that firsthand, and boy, that'd make you root for a guy even harder.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story. I had not heard that story, Dante. That's wonderful, and that's why he's so beloved by his teammates. He's real. There's nothing phony about what Jonathan Isaac is about as a human being. I mean, it's from the heart. It's who he is, and that's a pretty special guy right there for sure.
Yeah, and he told him in the video, I need you to get better, and I need you to come see me. I want to have you out at a game. So that's going to be a powerful moment, not only having him back in the building, but, that'll be special. But, guys, when at some point, we hope it's at some point next year when we're starting the season, but when you open those doors and, something you take for granted, multiple thousands of people in a building watching a basketball game, we've not had that. I mean, how powerful is that going to be, the first game, whenever it is, when we're able to reunite with our fans again?
I may cry. I'm not going to lie to you. I may cry. It has been so long. And
George is not one to get out there and mingle with fans. and it's going to mean a lot to him. And it's going to
I may stand at the door and hug everybody. Do you think that will be allowed, or will that be frowned upon?
Yes, that'll be fine.
Will that be frowned upon?
It might be a little intimidating, right? Like having all that noise and energy, David. I don't know, man. I kind of got used to having my peanut butter sandwich over there next to me that I could just sitting on the table. Like
you might retreat to the bunker.
I don't think I'll ever get used to the bunker. I'll take the arena.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, won't that be powerful? We'll get to reunite with fans and have them in the building. There's such an integral part of this whole thing. It's going to be great to have them back.
No question.
Well, all right, guys, I guess the last thing is for this team, and you guys alluded to it a little bit, but there's some decisions. Evan Fournier has a decision to make. He can opt out or come back. I would think with the uncertainty of this climate, I don't think he's going anywhere. I would think it would behoove him and everybody who has an opt-out year probably to return to their teams. But, that's his decision, and we'll see. DJ Augustine's a free agent. We know what he means to this team on and off the floor. And, Markelle Fultz got to end this season on his terms, which I think is fantastic for him. Just missed one game all year. So what does his growth look like for next year? So there's a lot that kind of has to be cleared up in the next couple of months as we get ready for next year.
You know what, for me, Dante, and you guys can weigh in on this because we haven't talked about it. I do want to spend a minute or two talking about Nick Vuchevich and what he did during the playoffs.
Very good, yeah.
Because I feel like I had a conversation, this was after game 3 or 4, very quick, briefly on text with Matt Lloyd. And this was after Vuch had another he was so good in the playoffs. He was so good in that series, especially coming off of what he went through against the Toronto Raptors in the 19 playoffs. for him to come out and do what he did in this series under these circumstances, can he take some of this and apply it into next year? I know we usually don't say, there's really no carryover and, you separate one from the other, but he has to be able to take some of this success, right, that he had in this series. And even he's already at an all-star level. He was at an all-star level last year. He got off to a slower start this year, but, during the last 20, 30 games of the season, he was right at the numbers as he was at the, all of last year, 21-11, 21-12. And this playoffs being 29 and 12, can he take a step here into next season and really take us to a different level if he's going to be that type of player?
What do you think,
so.
Jeff? I think so. I know we've talked about it a lot. Yeah, Jeff and I both think that's a case.
Yeah, and you guys have heard me make the point often that there's a time in a player's career, and it's usually into his late 20s, early 30s, where the game has just slowed down enough. You know who you are as a player, and you've matured, and you see it differently. And that's where Nikola Vuchevich is in his career. He's in his prime. And I will say this, and we probably didn't talk about it enough on air. It's one thing to say, I was disappointed in my performance last season and I've got to raise my level of play. But George, as you talked about, to do it, to actually go out and play at the level he did against the best defensive team in the NBA this season by the numbers, was really something special. So I think, the confidence that you get from that, the fact that you did it, you went out and did it. And Steve Clifford talked about it time and time again in his Zoom calls and things like that. When asked about it, is Vooch, during the first time they were allowed in the arena, he was the first one in there. He's the last to leave, sometimes twice a day. He got himself in the best shape. And was ready for when these playoffs started. So I think as a player like that, to have had this success, I would expect him to come back whenever the season begins again, ready. Now he's ready to go to the next level, right? So I've been to the playoffs twice. I had a disappointing one. I had a good one. The next step is we got to really compete. We got to get, competing to get to the later rounds of the playoffs. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think what we saw too, it was one of my questions to Coach Clifford, I believe it was before Game 4, about the volume of three-point shots that Vooch took in the series. And, he can get good three-point looks pretty much every night until teams really decide to take that away from him. And then, he's capable of making teams pay for that. So, I think the next step, and Steve Clifford said, yes, this is what we'd like to see, to take 7, 8, 9 threes per game. I mean, that's where the league is. And if he's going to be a 40 to 44% three-point shooter, then, that's a high percentage play for the Magic. And again, if teams start trying to take it away, he's capable of putting the ball on the floor. He's capable of making the right pass. So, I think he's, like Jeff said, he's in a great spot as a pro. I think back about, and it's interesting to me watching Jimmy Butler just play so well for Miami. And several years ago, there were people around the Bulls that, that Jeff and I talked to, and, Jimmy Butler, he's a good player, but, I don't know, he's not a guy, he's not a guy. He's just another, he's just another good player. And so he leaves Chicago, then Philly has him. And, they basically say the same thing.
Well, don't forget after he took Minnesota to the playoffs. Don't forget that little stint there too, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
So he's bounced around a little bit, but when you have a guy that is that talented and that competitive and works that hard, I'm not saying Vuchevich is Jimmy Butler. Butler's a different animal altogether, but Vooch is pretty special in his own way, in a different way. There's not many big guys that can do what he can do. You got something special. You just got to recognize it.
Correct.
Yeah,
You're right.
But Jimmy Butler is in that prime of his career, right? He's at that point, right, where all the work, that we know about, he's ready to, take on the responsibility of being the guy, right, for the Miami Heat. And So that's where he is. So
And if
I
you
feel like Vuch is in the same position.
he was so good, to you guys' points, that if you had one or two other guys kind of just catch fire in that's a completely different series. That puts a lot more pressure on Milwaukee. Now their defense had a big reason, was a big part of that. But I saw somebody mention the other day, you got Vuch, who's a career 18-10, 20-10 guy, right? He's been consistent every single season in the NBA. Then he has this unbelievable postseason. And then the point was, maybe Marc Gasol really is a very good defensive center. Because he's been 20-12, 22-10 his entire career. So you kind of got to give a little credit to Gasol last year, and Vuch was upset about that, and he took it to another level. I mean, he did some things that we've not seen in the postseason before. So yeah, you're right, Jordan. That's a good point, and credit to him. And I think that was good. Evan Fournier didn't have a great postseason, but he had a career year. He had a career regular season shooting the basketball. And just having Markelle Fultz healthy. And I thought that was the best thing from Jeff Weltman yesterday was that, next year, let's not be talking about the injury anymore with Markelle, right? We've moved on from that. Let's hope we're in a point where he's healthy. And now we're just talking about how he's learning the game and what he adds to the team.
I think that's why what you're talking about. You're talking about Fultz 22, Isaac, who we won't have next year, 22, but he's a big part of the future. Chuma Okeke obviously is a big part of the plans. Fournier is not likely to opt out. I don't think you're going to see a lot of roster changes. I certainly
Aaron Gordon. What's Aaron Gordon? 24.
Aaron Gordon. Yeah, I wouldn't presume to speak for the front office, but just given the circumstances and where we are, I wouldn't expect to see major changes. Would any of you guys?
I wouldn't.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And you may not see a whole lot of change throughout the league. I don't think you're going to see a lot of.
That's a big part of it.
Until we see what this 2021 season is going to look like and when it's going to start and what the salary cap is and this, that, and the other, I think you may just see a lot of teams just kind of standing pat.
But you may see a situation where a team, these are the things we don't know and the conversations that are being had. Jeff Weltman told us yesterday, two of the guys he gets the most calls about are the two centers who, quote unquote, don't fit today's game anymore, right? Nick Vuchevich and Mo Bamba. Well, they're 3-point shooting bigs, so they absolutely fit in today's game. And those are the guys that every team is calling about. So you don't know what guys did maybe during this year or in the postseason that raised some eyebrows where other teams may have an interest in come calling and want some of the assets that we have. You're just not sure. But you're right. I think our guys are quite happy with where we're at and give them another year together and then just start to get healthy. Well, guys, I appreciate it. It was a long road. We finally made it. 11 months worth of podcasts, and I know each one was memorable to each one of you guys in their own way. But it was fun. We got another season in the books, and it's fun. Fans enjoy it. They enjoy the behind the scenes. They enjoy the interaction, because kind of some of the insight we're able to provide with the players and the front office and all that. So nice job on this and throughout the whole year, guys. A job well done in unbelievable circumstances.
Thanks, Dante. Appreciate everything.
Thanks, Dante.
Now we'll have to see if we keep those sponsors for next year. That's the goal. We got to have those sponsors going into next year.
Well,
I have a meeting in a couple of weeks, and I think we're adding some more. But more.
Adding more. All
Make
right.
sure, Dante, that David use a little bit of that money so David gets reimbursed for those lamps. I'm really worried about those lamps.
I am worried
David.
too. Yes, for sure.
I gotta
Like
go
this?
get those lamps.
Was it like this lamp? A nice little lamp like that?
No, not that nice.
Not that nice.
Not that nice.
Not that nice.
Can I get back?
Guys...
Can I get back in the arena now to get those lamps? Or
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Sorry,
or they may have.
I've got that phase one badge that says phase one on it. Are we still in phase one over there?
You mean that big chest protector that you could wear when you were umpiring?
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't wear it one time, guys. I didn't wear that thing one time. Sorry.
Top notch, Dante. Way to abide by the rules.
Don't you guys want to know what's in?
One security guard wouldn't let me get in without that. Nobody else really noticed, but we had one. Where's that big one? You got to have that. So I was rummaging through my bag to find that thing.
I had my social security card. I had everything. This is me. I swear this is me.
I'm
That thing
disappointed.
barely fit in your bag, didn't it?
I know that thing's too big. I'm disappointed we won't be anywhere near that coach's lounge ever again, or that family room.
Yeah, that's it.
We've
We're
seen
done.
it. We've seen it for the last
That,
time.
that was a highlight. That was
That
nice.
was a highlight. All right, guys, appreciate it. This podcast presented to you by the all-new Seltos SUV from Kia, official vehicle of the Orlando Magic. Give it everything. We'll see you soon.